My last response video left me feeling kind of bad because it felt like I was punching down. So I've made sure that this time I'm doing a video where it feels like I am punching up. Dr. Schroeder is a PhD, while I am a lowly BS. His arguments ought to be able to kick my argument's ass. Let's find out if we're right.
My name is Gerald Schroeder. I have a, thank God, a strong science background from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, bachelor's, master's, PhD, 7 years in the physics staff, seen a whole range of atomic bombs detonated, moved to Israel, met my wife, Barbara Sofer, a great writer, and then teach Torah and science. So luckily, I'm lucky that I have the two that come together.
There is no science in the Torah, and they have nothing to do with each other. But that has never stopped an endless parade of zealots from trying to cram one of them into the other. I think they look at the credibility that science has and the waning credibility that their religious claims have, and the fact that, like it or not, scientists keep pumping out reliable and useful results year after year, and those results tend to be at odds with what's in your holy book. And I think religious people just kind of get a little bit envious of the success of science and the increasing failure of religious texts. So they do an equivocation fallacy. They are the same. They clearly are not the same. Because if they were the same, you wouldn't be so desperate to try to make us think they're the same. Let's see what angle Dr. Schroeder is trying for.
And one of the questions that I'm asked as a scientist is, how can a scientist really believe that there's something what we refer to usually as God? You know, is this metaphysical whatever acting in the world or producing the world?
A lot of scientists believe in gods, but they stick with the scientific method, and because of that, they are respected in science. Whether or not you believe in a god has nothing to do with whether or not you can use the scientific method. However, the moment you try to shoehorn your God into science, you have abandoned the scientific method. You are no longer doing science. If you can use the scientific method to get to a God, that's one thing. And if you can do that, I'll stop being an atheist. But what we've seen so far is not that thing. Scientists who do try to cram their religious presuppositions into their science wind up working in religious institutions. Let's say possibly teaching the Torah instead of physics. A minority of scientists are atheists, just as a minority of the total human population are atheists. But Dr. Schroeder is not about to let facts get in the way of his good story.
The irony is, the question's really a non-starter. Science has, in fact, discovered God.
Something tells me that if science had, in fact, discovered God, YouTube isn't the first place I'd be hearing about it.
And you can talk to the hardline atheists, and they will say, it looks like science has indeed discovered God.
I am not a hardline atheist, but I am an atheist. So let's see if I will wind up saying what he says I'll say. A quick look around online tells me that atheist scientists actually aren't the only ones that take issue with Dr. Schroeder's conclusions and the way he's tried to mathematically prove a God. There are a lot of scientists of other faiths who think he's up in the night as well. So it's not an atheist thing to think Dr. Schroeder might be misusing the scientific method. It's a scientist thing. Quite a few scientists who are Christian, not to be confused with Christian scientists who are not scientists, seem to agree that Dr. Schroeder is talking out of his ass. I am cutting out some of Dr. Schroeder's preambles and rambles for brevity. I'm the only one who gets to ramble on my channel. So if you are concerned that I might be quote mining, please follow the link to the original video in the description so that you can check on me and call me out if I'm being dishonest in the way I suspect Dr. Schroeder's gonna be dishonest.
It's a diagram that shows the development of the universe from the creation over time. It's a timeline.
It's a diagram of the universe from Planck time to the present. One thing that there isn't any of in the diagram is a creation. Because we didn't have expanded space-time prior to the Planck time, that's not going to be at the diagram, but that doesn't mean that there is not something there prior to the Planck time.
Every word on that diagram comes from the NASA site. It is the condensed knowledge of the scientific community of how the universe created.
Inflated, not created. You are presupposing, Dr. Schroeder, and that's not allowed in science. You have to follow where our observations lead us, not decide where you want to go and then try to find observations that take you there. I think I've just summarized the big difference between science and religion and why one works and the other one's full of shit.
And how it got to where we are today. Each of the lines, the vertical lines, is another billion years. Okay, you start from a burst of energy at the extreme left side of the diagram, and you end up at the far end with the oval. The oval is to indicate expansion in all directions. Of course, because it's a timeline, we can't show that on a single piece of paper.
There's a lot of multi-dimensional stuff that's difficult to show on a piece of paper. Time is the x-axis, space is the y and z, but space is also time. And since time and space only expand out to the drawn boundaries of the diagram, the piece of the paper that isn't the drawn diagram doesn't represent nothing. It just doesn't represent anything. We ignore it, just as if you draw a cute little house on a piece of paper, we don't say everything around the house is nothing, we just say everything around the house is not the house. The point is, what we're seeing is a derivative function. We're seeing like space-time over time. It's complicated, way more complicated than it appears to be.
We see here, most amazingly, that on the extreme left edge, it shows a beginning to the universe.
Astrophysicists generally agree that we don't know what's going on prior to the Planck time of the universe's expansion. Many physicists refer to the thing, because it's a whole lot of stuff crammed into a teensy tiny space, as a singularity. There may have been a singularity prior to the Planck time. If there was a singularity prior to the Big Bang, there can't have been nothing prior to the Big Bang, because a singularity isn't nothing, and Dr. Schroeder is therefore incorrect. There are other hypotheses about what there was prior to the inflation event of the universe. I don't think any of them involve nothing. The closest we get to a nothing is the vacuum genesis hypothesis, and even that involves all the energy in the universe being there.
Now go back less than 50 years. If I were teaching that at Tech, a person could lose tenure saying that there was a creation of the universe. It sounds like it's Bible. Because less than 50 years ago, the overwhelming scientific opinion was the universe is eternal.
Hubble observed that the universe was expanding almost a century ago in 1929. That was the official end of the classical or static universe. But Schroeder is mostly right about this. Newtonian physics did shape the minds of all the scientists prior to that time. And Newtonian physics dictated that we'd had an eternal, unchanging universe. Modern physics doesn't say we don't have an eternal universe, but I mean, obviously, it's changed a little bit at the very least.
There was never a beginning. The Bible is wrong from the very first sentence.
Science isn't in the business of disproving the Bible. You'd have to get the Bible included in science before you try to disprove it, because science is in the business of disproving science, and the Bible isn't even science. You know what we're trying to disprove? We're trying to disprove evolution. We're trying to disprove Big Bang cosmology. We're trying to disprove gravity. We're trying to disprove all of science. Science is an effort to disprove science, and as long as accepted science is not disproven, we continue to accept it. I think Dr. Schroeder is building the Bible up as far more important to science than it could possibly be. Most scientists, even the ones who believe in the Bible, leave the Bible home when they're doing science. It's not science. Scientists who are good at science favor observations over religious claims, and I'm starting to think that Dr. Schroeder doesn't fit in that category.
And then we discovered suddenly Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson, the Bell Labs in New Jersey, the northeast of the US, discovered the echo of the Big Bang, the energy left over, which George Gamow 60 years ago predicted that if there had been a universe created hot and small, it would have exploded and the energy would get more and more dilute. And Penzias and Wilson discover this energy that had been predicted overnight. The Bible got it right. There was a beginning to the universe.
Just as the eternal universe wasn't an attempt to refute the Bible, the Big Bang wasn't an attempt to confirm the Bible. And if you are a biblical literalist, the Big Bang is more a refutation than a confirmation of the Bible.
How are we going to have this idea, is there a God or not? Notice that the creation force isn't a three-letter word, G-O-D. If you look at the words carefully, it's a quantum fluctuations.
Quantum fluctuations are not credited with the creation of our universe. Only creationists say the universe was created, and creationists are, by definition, not scientists. Quantum fluctuations are proposed as a potential mechanism for triggering the current expansion phase of our universe, because something had to trigger it. And we know quantum fluctuations exist. We've measured quantum fluctuations. We use them every day. When you do the boop laser at the supermarket, you're using quantum science. Big Bang cosmology holds that the universe existed as a singularity prior to expansion. Quantum fluctuations don't seek to answer the question of whence we came, but rather why we banged when we banged. We like quantum fluctuations because we know they can occur and they don't have to be part of a causal chain. Quantum fluctuations are one of the uncaused causes that defeat the premises of most cosmological arguments for a creator.
The universe allows creation of something from nothing, provided you have the laws of nature, the quantum fluctuation.
A singularity is not nothing. Most accepted models in Big Bang cosmology either include a singularity that contained all of the matter and energy in our current universe, typically in the form of energy, or there are even Big Bang cosmologies that have a model where all of the energy in our universe sums to zero. In the former case, we get something from something. In the latter case, we get a much more interesting nothing from a much less interesting nothing. In neither case do we get something from nothing.
That you can create something from absolute nothing, provided you've got the laws of nature, quantum physics and the laws of relativity. In other words, the laws of nature.
That's just false. Possibly he's lying. The genesis of particle-antiparticle pairs in a vacuum relies on vacuum energy. And where there is a vacuum energy, there is not nothing, because vacuum energy is something. One of the hypotheses competing with the singularity hypothesis is called vacuum genesis. In vacuum genesis, quantum fluctuations in the initial vacuum energy are responsible for the expansion of everything in our current universe, as opposed to everything coming from a singularity. But, and I cannot stress this often enough, neither of those are examples of something coming from nothing.
So look what science has discovered. We can create the universe from absolute nothing, provided we have the forces of nature.
As we've already established, the forces of nature are not nothing. So this claim is self-contradicting. We can get something from nothing as long as we begin with something which is not nothing. A equals B, but A does not equal B.
Now, the laws of nature, the forces of nature aren't physical. They act on the physical.
That which acts on the physical is physical. This is another contradiction, presumably because Dr. Schroeder must rely on contradictions to try to make his God make sense. But if you rely on contradictions to make something make sense, then all you've got is nonsense.
So if they create the universe, that means they predate the universe.
That is more nonsense. The universe includes all of time because time is part of space. While it makes grammatical sense to talk about something happening before time, it doesn't make logical sense because things happening happen in time. It is inconsistent with physics. That is something that Dr. Schroeder should be more familiar with than me, because he's got all the letters after his name in physics, whereas my little BS after my name is in biology. So I think it's starting to be reasonable to conclude that Dr. Schroeder isn't confused. He's lying.
So now we have a set of forces, we call them the laws of nature, that are not physical.
Still nonsense. The laws of nature are a human invention, and the universe existed for 13 billion years before humans appeared. It is tempting to think of the laws of physics as immaterial rules that just float around in the universe. But the fact is, they are a mathematical description that we made to try to explain what we see. As science, the laws of nature are contingent. That means they could be wrong. We might disprove them later on, or replace them with something better. As something that can be disproven, the laws of nature are merely a concept. They have no ontology. They have no existence. The laws of nature are as independent of the human mind as whether or not cilantro tastes like soap.
That are able to act on the physical, they create the physical from absolute nothing.
If it interacts with the physical, it is physical. Nothing created the universe. You're presupposing your God to get to your God, because circular logic is the only logic that works when you're using presuppositional logic. And if you're using presuppositional logic, are you even using logic at all? You're certainly not using science.
And they predate the universe, which means they predate our understanding of time.
There is no time without time, no space without space. Something that exists for no time is synonymous with something that does not exist.
Put that together, it sounds very familiar. If you haven't noticed it, that's the biblical definition of God.
I guess that makes sense then. You were forced to propose nonsensical things, masquerading as science, in order to shoehorn in your presuppositions about a God. There is nothing before time in science because we don't waste our time with nonsense. There are no non-physical things that interact with physical things because we don't waste our time with nonsense in science. There are no accepted models in science that propose a creation of our universe from nothing. Given that the universe is defined as everything that exists in the universe, there was nothing that currently exists prior to the universe. Are you sure you're not proving that your God doesn't exist?
It's that which created the universe, those forces active in the universe. But up to that point, science says you are correct. The definition of the biblical God is predates time, outside of time. God is not a physical being, is a force, and it creates the universe.
Going back to your initial claim that hardline atheists will say it looks like science has discovered God, I'm going to have to disagree. I'm a lukewarm atheist at best, and your circular logic has only served to convince me that you are more interested in proselytizing your faith than you are in what is true. You have attempted to define your God into existence while, perhaps unintentionally, literally defining your God out of existence. To exist outside of time is to exist for no time. To exist outside of space is to exist in no space. By your reasoning, your God does not exist. You know better than to pretend that scientific laws are discrete from the universe or have a discrete existence in the universe. My bullshit understanding of physics from 1 year of physics that is required for a biologist is sufficient for me to understand that the laws of physics are the product of human minds and are contingent, may be disproven, may be replaced. They are necessarily so, and that is why we have tossed out more physics than we currently use. Your glib insistence on treating concepts as forces doesn't make your case, but rather undermines your credibility. I am not surprised that your case for your God is as wobbly as a toddler's first steps, but I am disappointed. I can see why you teach the Torah instead of physics these days. I've been the out-of-body atheist, and I'm still not convinced. Although, I could be convinced that Dr. Schroeder is a liar and not even a very good one.